Audio Jungle.
All right, we are live. Omar.
Welcome everybody to the South Star Classroom, coming to you now live Tuesday, 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. We got with us, as always, the beard of knowledge, David Castillo. What's up, David? How are you, man?
I'm doing good. Good to be here. We're missing our fearless leader, Dr. Cole, who's doing a retreat
We
with
are
his
missing
team.
Dr. Cole. And we got with us the lovely and beautiful Jubilee Ransom. Jubilee,
Yep.
Let's do a quick circle and check in how everybody's doing first. Jubilee, what's up? How are you? What happened this week?
Listen, it's been glorious. Today was the last day of school for my sons. So now I have a soon-to-be high schooler, and a seventh grader. And I think I'm doing pretty well. I think I'm doing pretty well at this independent momming thing, temporarily.
All right.
It's been great. They're out at the rec center having a blast, and I am sitting in the nice cool AC, drinking one of my favorite beverages. This is not an advertisement. This is great.
That's an Izzy.
Izzy. Mm-hmm.
Izzy's. Yeah, I like the Izzy's.
Yes.
Good stuff.
I am wrapping up a project, a DEIA project, the one I referred to before. This DEIA lens work, changing language, terminology, processes to ensure that they're equitable. So that's how I've been spending my time.
Right on. David, what's up in your neck of the woods, man?
Awesome. Same. We're still in school. We finished this week. My son finishes on Thursday, and he'll be moving on to the 8th grade. So we are getting close, and just getting kind of getting ready for summer, and looking forward to some downtime and some getting outside into the natural world. That's what's happening.
Love it.
The natural world. What, like you're gonna take him to the redwoods? Like, what are we talking about here?
Sure, the redwoods, the desert. Probably spend a lot of time at the coast, at the beach once the weather kind of clears up. But we're definitely beach people, so that's kind of what we do.
Oh, right on. I like that.
Oh yeah.
The beach. Cool, man.
Yeah.
We finished our regular school year this past week. And then what we're in right now in El Paso at the El Paso Leadership Academy is like a summer bridge. So a lot of for those in the know, gap remediation, like kids that didn't do well on their end of course exams in high school that they need to pass in order to graduate high school, doing remediation work there, helping our emerging bilingual kids, helping kids that didn't pass the state exam. So a lot of good stuff here. That all gets into the conversation that I get to be extraordinarily excited and self-centered about this week. Because as our viewers know, the El Paso Leadership Academy, an organization that I founded and run to this day, is a charter school. We're now at 3 schools, so we're now officially a CMO. We're actually working with the South Star to do some consulting work there. So putting our money where our mouth is, like my own school is getting the consultant support from South Star, which is awesome. However, what today's subject is all about, kids, is there is a huge report put out by Stanford University called the CREDO report. CREDO report is extremely comprehensive. It's a big deal. You may get a little wonky, but we're going to try to keep it real for you guys. The explosive news from this report, explosive, ladies and gentlemen, is that this report has essentially concluded that charter schools, on average, have a statistically significant positive impact on student learning. To put that in less wonky terms, it's basically saying charter schools overall are outperforming traditional public schools, and they're doing it by a lot. And then if you start dipping into certain populations, you will see that the results are dramatic in terms of the impact that it has. So that's our goal for us today. But before we kind of dip into the project, into the topic today, either one of you, anything else that we got to jump in and discuss that I forgot about? Twitter handles, Instagram handles, that our show is also going to be still on Fridays, 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern time as a rerun. Anything else we're forgetting?
Just a reminder for folks that are watching, make sure to like and share the stream if you like what you're seeing, as well as comment if you have questions during the show. We'd love to take your comments. So thanks for being here, everybody.
Right on. And like, we don't have our dogs as guests. My dog is here, but he's being very chill. We also don't have Dr. Cole talking about bad damn dog. And I'm like, man, you need to get yourself a dog and a better attitude about dogs, man. You go have yourself a coconut smile.
He says he loves animals, he loves pets, and so we have to clear up this narrative that he feels we've created about him in terms of not liking pets. For the record, South Star Classroom family, Dr. Charles Cole III loves pets.
That's what I'm talking about. I love that. We're discussing this right now. All right, kids. So why don't we go ahead and dip into what this is? So, David, are you able to pull up the report?
Yeah, let's see. It is which you want, the Ed Week, or do you want the Stanford? Let me see what happens here.
The Stanford one. That's okay. The one we want. And I'm going to do a quick breakdown over the next 3 to 5 minutes of kind of discussing what this is, some really vital points, and then essentially kind of getting into our root question for today. So, ladies and gentlemen, kids, the CREDO report is a report that Stanford University does. They've been doing it since the early 2000s, doing an analysis specifically of how charter schools perform in the United States, especially compared to traditional public schools. So there's been 3 CREDO studies since its inception in the early 2000s. I forget what the dates were of the first CREDO study. I felt it was like 2003 to like 2007. Could have been actually like 3 to maybe 2008. So I think that was our first CREDO study. The second study was done 2009 to 2013, and this last study 2014 to 2019. So for those in the audience that are like, hey man, like, why should I care about this study? This study is a big deal. It's what's called empirical analysis. And that's a really lofty term for basically saying, hey, we did a scientific study over 5 years. This isn't just, anecdotal information. We've run the numbers, we've accounted for all the variables, and our results are airtight, meaning indisputable. This is not one of those like fake ass surveys where like 4 out of 5 dentists recommend Colgate. Jubilee, I don't know if you ever met a dentist that's been asked about Colgate, but I haven't met no dentist that's been asked about Colgate. That's a broke ass study. This is a real scientific study to basically say our results are airtight. They're indisputable. We've already run the numbers, accounted for all the variables. That's what an empirical analysis is. Do something called regression analysis, which is high-end economic work that basically says, all those things that you were trying to account for, we already figured them out and accounted for it. So these results, guys, airtight. What did they find, David? What they found is no matter what, it doesn't matter what kind of student, Black, white, Asian, Latino, high income, low income, doesn't matter. If you're in a charter school, on average, you had a far better educational outcome than you did at a traditional public school. Breaking down into numbers, what they did is an analysis saying, hey, if a kid's in school for 180 days, how many more days of growth and learning did a kid have in a charter school? And what they found is that on average, if you were enrolled in a charter school, you had 16 additional days of growth. So if you took a traditional public school and they had 180 days, a charter school and you had 180 days, the student that was in the charter school demonstrated growth in reading as if they had 16 more days of school, which is massive. It's statistically significant to show, whoa, you're growing kids in reading and in math faster and better than the traditional public school. If you break down in terms of math, it demonstrated 6 days of growth. But those aren't even the most startling revelations from this study. What they found is straight up, if you're Black or Hispanic in the United States and you're going to a charter schools, it is undeniable the margins of growth and success far outweigh that of a traditional public school. If you are in poverty, if your student happens to be an emerging bilingual or an English language learner, if your child is in SPED, all 4 of those categories, all 4 of those students demonstrated significantly higher gains in academic growth than their peers in traditional public schools, which means that what this study has demonstrated is what I've been screaming for years, is that the really, really great charter schools have solved a crisis in America. And what they've done is demonstrate that, oh, yo, hey, those kids who everyone thought couldn't learn, we're teaching them and they are learning and they're outpacing the traditional public school and they are doing significantly better than the traditional public school. Now, I've got more things that I want to dip into, more statistics and some more startling quotes from the study. But right now, I just want to get hot takes from Jubilee and David. What do you think about these results? Because this is nuts.
Why don't you go ahead, Jubilee?
Oh, I have so much to say on this topic. This is great. I'm so glad we're talking about this. My initial response is, I knew it, I knew it, I knew it. I'm not surprised at all, having worked and led and taught in both traditional public schools and charter schools. I knew it. And I have an insider's perspective, right? And then I also sent my children to both traditional public schools and charter schools. So I also have the lens of and the perspective of a parent as well. So I am not surprised. And I really hope that this conversation helps folks understand, but also I hope that we can give some recommendations on what the heck needs to happen next, because charter schools are on to something for a myriad of reasons.
Well said. David, your hot take?
All right. My hot take is I'm not surprised. I'm familiar with this study because the study, I don't know how the frequency of it is. I think it's every couple of years. And I've seen there have been years where it's kind of close, so you could make an argument, but it was more muddled. And I think this time, for the first time, it's very clear across the board. And again, primarily for Black and brown and low income students. So I think that's probably, the target population for many charter school networks. And so it's good to see. And like Jubilee, I think, with the current state of charter schools in specific states, and the attack on charter schools, my wonder is how this study will impact, the attack on charter schools, or will it, finally help to shift the quote unquote narrative about charter schools?
Man, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because are you able to bring up some of the text from the study by any chance?
I can't. I'm trying, but I'm struggling with it. Yeah.
All right, no worries. I can kind of read it out loud here. I want to kind of maybe get to some of the most significant quotes that I saw from the study, because one of the things that everyone has said about charter schools is that, look, you cherry pick kids, you're essentially getting kids who have parents that are more motivated, and as a result, like, those kids are more motivated. So what's going on is that you're getting all these academic results because you've got more motivated students, parents that are more motivated, or what I continuously hear from everyone in the United States, especially the unions, especially some of the like very ignorant superintendents here in El Paso, is that you're cherry picking kids. The reason those kids are doing better is that you're taking the cream of the crop, you're cherry picking kids, you're getting kids that are already doing exceptionally well academically, you're getting parents that are motivated. And I want to just take a moment to quote this from the study and then break this down. In the past, this is a direct quote from the CREDO study. In the past, the common claim asserted that positive academic results in charter schools arise from advantages that their students bring to their schooling. In some cases, the claim focused on students having more motivated parents. Another version suggests targeting behavior on the part of the school results in a student body that is better prepared academically, a practice commonly referred to as cherry picking or cream skimming. That cream of the crop, you're just getting better kids.
Mm-hmm.
If true, the students in charter schools would show higher academic achievement at the point of enrollment. In multiple analyses, we do not see significant evidence of an undue advantage to charter schools. In fact, we find the opposite is true. Charter schools enroll students who are disproportionately lower achieving than the students in their former traditional public schools. Boom! That is a bombshell of a comment. Bombshell.
Yeah.
And if you're not like already like, what the hell, as an audience member, maybe you don't understand how bombshell a comment this is. What everyone says to basically clean up after their own asses because they can't get gains for kids because they're not finding ways to achieve educational equity for everybody is, hey, yo, the reason charter schools do so well is because they're getting good kids, their parents are more motivated, they're getting the best of the best kids. It's their bullshit excuse for essentially saying this is why charters do better and we can't actually do that. We're the traditional public school system. What this is said without a shadow of a doubt, without any kind of comparison, is that claim is utter bullshit. Meaning, no, there is no cherry picking. There is not a motivated student. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Those of us in the charter school are getting disproportionately underachieving students, kids that are traditionally doing terrible in the traditional public school system. We're getting them, we're educating them, we're getting them more gains, more advanced, and higher academic outcomes than the traditional public schools. What do you think about that bombshell comment, you two?
I mean, I've heard all the excuses. I mean, I've heard that obviously the cherry picking, the more motivated parent theory, and several others. I do think it's important to note that, charter schools have been around for how long? 20 something years.
About, yeah.
And so I think legitimately in the early years of charter schools, there was, more than likely some funny business around enrollment and, in places where you didn't have like clear and transparent enrollment systems. But over time, all this has matured. It's gotten more sophisticated. And I serve on the board. I'm the board chair of an organization in Oakland, and we run the management system, the enrollment system for all the charter schools in Oakland, and it's one system. So there's really no way to game it. And so I think the interesting thing about this quote is that when I was the principal at Oakland Unity High School, I was the principal there for I think 10 years, and we were definitely getting stellar results for our kids. And we brought on a new board member at one point. He was coming from the KIPP world, and he was curious to dive into our data a little bit. And so we did like a 2-year study of students that were coming into the school after the first day of school, right? So these are students that are transferring in at some point during the school year, and then looking at students that also transferred out of the school during the school year. So not looking at students that started or ended, all the movement in between. And we found, it was very clear to us that students that were enrolling at the school during the school year had much lower median math and reading scores, and students that were leaving had much higher. So it's exactly getting to the point of this comment. Yeah.
Where do we begin? Cherry picking. So when I think back to my own experience and the experience of many, of my colleagues, I think about the fact that in order to have your charter school approved, in order for you to meet your enrollment numbers, you had to adopt a theory for recruitment and for admissions that was extremely grassroots. Meaning, I myself, my colleagues had to go knocking on doors, having open houses in libraries, community centers, projects, right? Basketball courts, wherever you could find a parent that you could let know, hey, there's a new school coming in the area, and we think that we're going to be able to offer your child a really great educational experience. Why don't you come and find out more about us? And so a lot of the times that's how children come to be, and in terms of becoming a part of a school community, is that way. And so the cherry picking is just like a big red over it, because it's just not the case. And that also includes, and I know that there's more information that needs to come out and be looked at around special education populations and English language learners, right? But at the end of the day, if you're going to stay open as a charter school, you have to meet numbers, and your number has to be representative of the community that you are serving. So if you're getting students in and everybody's got a level 4 on the test, or the highest level on the test, of course, that's going to raise a red flag. And whoever the authorizer is, or whoever is, over that school, is going to be like, wait a minute, you don't have a good mix of diversity here, right? So cherry picking, fine. But I do want to say, in terms of charter schools being pitted against traditional public schools, like, I am 100,000% against that, because to me, it really goes against what the initial purpose of charter schools being is for, right? And so me having worked on both sides, charter school was like, yo, there's some things that we're kind of sucking at. Let's try this. Let's give this a shot to see what new ideas we can come up with, right? And so suddenly it became a war. It became the East Side Coast versus the West Coast. You know what I'm saying? It's just like the good witch.
You got a love for the West Coast?
Yeah, like how did we get here? And so I think if we haven't made any progress, right, as traditional public schools, or the traditional public school system, I think it's because the charter school versus traditional public school system became a war versus a collaborative learning experience. Right. Before I left the school that I was serving as an AP at, before I transitioned into my principalship role, we were a traditional public school, and we partnered with one of the largest CMOs in New York City, because we had some great systems going on. We had our DDI going on, right? We had figured out behavior management. We had figured out PBIS, right? And how to really service our children with special needs. But we still needed some support around instructional coaching and guided reading and that kind of stuff. And there was a CMO that was granted funds, and it was like, okay, let's partner with these schools and let's share resources. And that was the purpose of charter schools. That was the purpose. So the fact that, like, we are still in this place where we're not learning from one another, because I think charter schools can also learn from traditional public schools in some ways. Right? The fact that we're not learning from one another, I think, is one of the biggest factors for our lack of progress overall as an academic system.
Yep. And we're going to get into that later in the show, because that's really going to be like my second tier question about all this. So that's an awesome interlude. So what I want to kind of do is quickly state a couple more of the results and facts, and then I'm going to open it up to the central question of this show, which is, what is it that charter schools are doing to get these like inordinate gains? The second question being what Jubilee said is, why are we not working collaboratively with other school systems in order to share these practices so that these school districts can also see these gains? Because now the proof is definitive. It is basically saying charter schools have figured this out. Traditional public schools have not figured this out. So how are we finally creating the bridge between charter and traditional so that we can work together? So before we jump into those questions, just managing expectations so that you're ready for it, I want to just dip into a little bit more of what the CREDO study was saying. So on page 6 of the executive summary, kids that I was referring to earlier, that if like you're Black or Hispanic, if you're in poverty, if you're an emerging bilingual student, if you're SPED, you're getting some major gains. So what does that look like? It's massive, y'all, like absolutely huge. What you're finding is large margins for all those. But if you're a kid in an urban school, you're getting 29 days additional growth in reading and 28 days additional growth in math, which is enormous. So it's basically saying, yo, the 180 days of traditional schools, the 180 days at charter, that charter school just in their 180 days is doing so well that the kid is getting 30 more days of schooling in reading and math, which is astronomically high. Then you're wondering, well, what about the suburban schools? Same thing, 14 days of reading and 3 days in math. Now, here's what I found to be really interesting, and I kind of just want to share this as an FYI, because this is fascinating. The rural schools did have an equivalent of 5 days additional in reading, but then they had 10 days less days in growth in math. These are the rural schools, but they were really definitive about why. And this is fascinating. They said that the results were strongly hampered by the performance of virtual schools. So even though only 6% of charter school students are enrolled in virtual schools, their performance is abhorrent. 58 days fewer learning, 124 days fewer in math, which means to me that A, virtual learning isn't working. I think we all figured that out during the pandemic, and we tried our very best. But this goes to show you that not only is virtual learning not working, but these virtual charter schools are dog shit. They're cash cows. And anyone who's really talking about the virtual learning system not working because students aren't being held accountable. Now, here's another quick pieces. If you are in a charter school for 4 years or more, meaning like, hey, you've had continuous enrollment in a charter school, holy smokes, the gains are insane. An additional 45 days of learning on average per year if you've been enrolled in a charter school, which basically means like, hey, if you stay in a charter school by their 4th year, those gains are 45 days stronger a year for reading and 39 days for math. That is bonkers.
So that's a great point. And I think, that's a different or a deeper level of looking at data than I think most people are used to. It's when I ran schools, we would always look at our data cut up in a number of different ways. So let's say if Jubilee was a student at my school and she had been there for 2 or more years, like we absolutely were responsible for showing some kind of growth on any kind of assessment. Omar shows up brand new. His first year at our school is a baseline year. And so we can look at all the students together, but it's also important to, for individual schools and CMOs to do what this report did. And that's to look at impact over time. So the longer students have been with you, you should start to see growth. If a student is new to a school or a CMO, they're establishing a baseline, and that's where you start from. So I think that is a very interesting finding.
It's nuts. And you're
I mean,
absolutely
it's
right.
very wonky. Let me just say, the
Very.
longer you're with us,
Yep.
the the
Better.
better and the quicker you're going to learn, right? And if you walk in off the street, that's your starting point, right? And you measure growth from there.
Exactly. Well said. So to continue really quick, last two things that I want to dive into our questions. On page 12, I think this was the most bombshell comment because honestly, this is what Jubilee, David, Charles Cole, and I have been screaming from the mountains from day one, minute one, back in the day. We couldn't have said it better ourselves. The title of this particular caption is called Exceptional Performance in Charter Schools. And let me read it to you all really quick, and we can do a quick breakdown. Perhaps the most revealing finding of our study is that more than 1,000 schools have eliminated learning disparities for their students and moved their achievement ahead of their respective states' average performance. This basically saying like, these kids are doing better than the state average, and they were doing horribly. We refer to these schools as, quote, gap-busting charter schools. They provide strong empirical proof that high quality, high equity education is possible anywhere. Let me go ahead and repeat that really quick, just so it can sink in. These gap-busting charter schools, meaning the gap of performance between low-income kids and regular income kids, or minorities and their Anglo counterparts, they're saying these schools provide strong empirical proof that high quality, high equality, excuse me, I said equity last time, high quality, high equality education is possible anywhere. This is a enormous bombshell, because what happens in the traditional public schools is the consistent lament, these kids will never learn. It's those kids. Those kids should be plumbers. Those kids should be electricians. Like, we can't educate every kid. Like the kids south of the highway, about those kids. Oh, those brown kids. Oh, those black kids. Oh, those poor kids. It's a constant stream of cowardly dog crap that these traditional public schools have been spewing for decades, saying we can't educate all kids. Not all kids are meant for college. Not all kids can learn. Sad to say, but some kids, as Caddyshack would say, are just meant to be ditch diggers. This is finally demonstrated proof that has been horseshit from day one, and that any child, anywhere, in any circumstance can have high educational achievement if the school is good and the teachers are good. That is an insane finding. Finally, this bombshell comes up. It's about time. And the last piece that I would refer to for all of you that are like, what's up with this study? I bet that's a bunch of BS. I can make any study to say anything. And I'm like, no, you don't. You read a bunch of fake ass studies on Facebook. You've never read an empirical analysis. You don't know about high level econometrics. So let me just go ahead and quote this, and then I want to get into our topic today. Quote, "These results stand up to deeper investigation. Charter schools produce superior student gains despite enrolling a more challenging student population than their adjacent traditional public schools. They move Black and Hispanic students and students of poverty ahead in their learning faster than if they were enrolled in their traditional public school. They are more successful than the local public school alternatives across most grade spans and community settings. These results show that charter schools use their flexibility to be responsive to the local needs of their communities." Boom!
Yeah.
So, kids, I mean, after your just initial hot take, I want to get into the question of the show. What are we doing? What are we doing that's having such dramatic gains? And how can we share that with the traditional public schools so that every kid can get this stuff? The floor is yours.
Yeah, that's a big question.
It's a big question.
I think that's what Omar is reading is the conclusion from the I think executive summary of the report. It's a very extensive report. I'll put it in the chat as well. It's like 160 pages long. But when you're saying those things, before we talk about how or what are charter schools doing to achieve these results, I'm just thinking about the last couple of years and all of the political pushback against, trying to remove or add extra levels of like bureaucracy for the federal charter school grant program, right? It's a national program that is designed to help charter schools get off of the ground, right? And with the shift from the Trump to the Biden administration, access to those funds to grow charter schools became much more difficult. And I think now looking at this report, you have to scratch your head and say, like, was that a smart move if you're really focused on making sure that, Black, brown, low income students should have opportunity? By removing those dollars and creating other kinds of obstacles for charter schools operating or charter schools that want to grow, you're definitely not doing right by kids. That's my first thought. But I'd love to hear from a practitioner, Jubilee, like your thoughts on like what are charters doing differently and how, what are some things that charters do differently to get these results?
Sure. I think the question that I really have in my mind is like what becomes possible within a charter school structure. And I think the sky is the limit, right? We can even go higher than the sky. And it starts out with the belief. And so I don't want to pigeonhole it to say, only charter schools, but any school that starts out with a really, really strong and high belief that any kid, any child that walks in through those doors, given the time, the accountability, the resources, the care, the social emotional development, can thrive here, can learn here, that all children can learn, all children can grow, and all children are deserving, that changes the game immediately. Mm-hmm. And so I think what becomes possible within charter school structures is that a lot of the times who is hired from leadership all the way down to, a custodian will most likely have a belief that children deserve to be here. Children deserve a great education. And that changes the trajectory of what the academic day looks like. It changes the trajectory of what social emotional learning looks like, character development looks like, parent engagement looks like. It permeates the entire culture. So I would start there with the belief. I think that when we look at some traditional public schools, that belief may not be there because the system is bogged down with so many other factors that we forget about the fact that we're here for children, So I think that's the question I would love to kind of lean into. It's like, what becomes possible? What becomes possible when you have adequate resources within a charter school structure, right? Within an academic structure, right? What becomes possible when you have adequate resources, when you're not constantly fighting with unions and union representation, where unions are not running schools and telling leaders what can be done, what can't be done, right? What could become possible when you can retain a teacher with adequate resources, pay them, adequately, or you can terminate them for poor performance because children are not getting what they need in that classroom. What becomes possible when you have not only autonomy, right? You have a high level of autonomy, you have a high level of accountability. What becomes possible when you add flexibility to autonomy? So that way I can look at my staffing plan and I can look at my budget, right? And yes, maybe I get a similar amount to the school down the block. Maybe I might get a little more. That's a whole nother topic. But what becomes possible if I have these things and I am able to just make decisions based on what children need most on a daily basis? It could happen. It's been happening in charter schools for years, and that's why we're seeing this report. But the same can be true of traditional public schools if we actually leverage this knowledge that we're getting.
Yeah,
it's like, go ahead.
It feels like it's the way that that the schools are set up, and so for people that are listening, every charter school has a vision and a mission, right? And they're all different. and you hire to that mission and vision. So in general, in mass, charter schools have a tremendous amount of control over who they hire and who they fire. These things are more difficult in the public district school system with some of the rules of seniority and some of the bureaucracy that they've set up for themselves, right? That they could easily tear down. In any school I've ever run, like it didn't matter who you were. You could have been a teacher or a director, a parent liaison, a tutor, somebody working in the food services. It was all about mission and vision, and we hired to that. You hire. It's like drafting players for like your dream team, your baseball or your football or hockey, basketball team. You have that choice. So I think there's the human capital element that Jubilee was getting to. I think also, there are a number of things, but I think the other piece, and I've worked in traditional public schools, and I was shocked to see and experience, and this still happens to this day, and we've talked about it on this show, is the challenges around getting people to the table to develop professionally. Professional development, it's very limited in the public district school system. It's all by contract. And in charter schools, typically spend more time, teachers, administrators, in professional development doing the planning work, looking at student data, trying to solve problems, talking about curriculum and instruction. All of these things eventually feed into stronger academics. But again, where a typical charter school, you might have 3 hours of professional development a week. And that same week in the district school down the street, they might have an hour, and you know what? Omar's the principal. He's giving he's offering a professional development. And you know what? It's 3:45. That's my quitting time. He has another 20 minutes to go. I'm out of here because of my contract, right? It's hard to get people like, engaged in that work, and that's very important work. So I feel like those are two things that stick out to me. In addition to, like, we could say a longer school year, longer school days. There's a whole bunch that kind of feed into this. So yeah.
I couldn't agree more, and I kind of want to transition it really quickly into a few things, and I want to prepare you guys for that transition so you can kind of start thinking about it. Because I'm going to straight up ask you, like, there's so much that we could talk about here. What are the top 3 things that charter schools are doing? Top 3 practices that you think could be quick turnarounds that a traditional public school could easily do in order to start garnering these gains. I'll hit you up with my top 3 after you all, but just quickly on this front, I want to discuss that what these results have demonstrated is not just conclusive, but it basically demonstrates that, like, there are so many factors that charter schools are doing, and you all enumerated a number of them. I think it breaks down to just adaptability. And I want us to think about this really quick because I want to answer Toya's question as well. Toya, thank you for joining us. We love you. We so appreciate you being on the show as always. And Toya, you're absolutely right. And I want to break that down for a second. Traditional public schools, guys, their structure was set up to have the exact results that they're having because those are the results that they were supposed to have when they were built in the 1930s, which is this high echelon, maybe 10% of kids will graduate high school. High school kids. This is the traditional public school. There was no like, hey, all these kids are going to college. It's like those rich kids in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Yeah, maybe they go to college, but what we're really trying to do is get kids to pass the 6th grade. That is what a traditional public school is set up to do. We're going to get this high strand to, graduate from high school, and if they go up to college, there's their upper management. We're going to get these kids to go to high school. If they happen to finish or not, there is your management of the factory system. This overwhelming majority of kids who got about a 6th grade education in reading and in math, those are your factory workers. And then these other kids, well, we know what to do with them. They're cleaning up the factory. That is what traditional public schools were set up to do. because there's been zero innovation in that traditional public school system. People keep thinking about, like, and I can't stand it. And there are people locally that do this all the time. Like, if we just had more coding, they keep thinking of these bullshit silver bullet theories because they don't know jack shit about education or about systems or about organization. They're about as like organized, intelligent, and cognizant as like a Cabbage Patch doll. or like a children's, party clown with Tourette syndrome, to quote Dennis Miller. Like, that's how effective these thoughts are. To answer Toya, I think the most incredible thing about charter school is the fact that we are highly adaptable to new circumstances and can change those circumstances to meet the needs of the community, meet the needs of the kids, and meet the needs of the circumstances, because our systems are new. And they're new in order to create the difference between what I think a traditional school, which is compliance. All we're doing is compliance. We're not striving for excellence. Whereas charter school systems are derived for excellence. What are we doing in order to get inordinate gains in the traditional public school system? So yes, Toya, the reason that I think leadership matters is because I think the charter school system draws in leaders that are significantly more adaptive and thinking about, I want to have high results for kids versus, yeah, I'm just going to do this and be another cog in the wheel, and the system's a system, and hopefully I'll be a principal one day, and some kids will learn and some kids won't, but at least I'll get a fat retirement. That is the big difference. So I agree with you completely, Toya, but that is the big difference between leadership in charter schools and not. So that gets into the top three. You guys got a top three? It goes Jay-Z, Reggie, Tupac, Biggie, Andre from Outkast, Nas and Biggie.
I actually have, now you're going to make me do that tonight.
Yeah, you're going to do your top five, man. That's a good movie. Chris Rock, and everyone should have their top five. But in this case, top three practices you think charter schools are killing it at that a traditional public school could easily adapt. Woo. Ooh. I ask the hard questions when I host. I ask them, they're hard.
I mean, here's what I can say, right? Like, I don't think anything's easy because it's so inculcated. Like, the structure is a structure, and it has been the structure for years. And like I said, unions are a big part of that. So I think long term, anything's possible. But I think number one is the belief. Like I said earlier, it is the belief coupled with strong leadership. Right? People that get in that leadership seat and are like, hey, I'm here for children. Whoever walks through this door, we're going to do our very best by that child. It doesn't matter where they were. It doesn't matter what they did. It doesn't matter if they speak English or don't. It doesn't matter if they need a one-to-one paraprofessional or they don't. We are going to get that kid a high quality education, right? And that leader sets the tone. So if that's at all possible, it doesn't mean that you have to have 58 degrees. I think there are leaders that maybe don't have as many degrees or as much experience as other leaders, but because they have that belief, right, they are able to narrow their focus on why I'm in this seat. Right? I am not in this seat to like to only do compliance things and check all the boxes. I'm here to ensure that there's high quality instruction going on in this building. So that's one. I'd say belief coupled with strong leadership, right? Free up instructional leaders. I've been to tons of charter schools around the world. I've been to tons of traditional public schools, and any school that's thriving has a leader, an instructional leader that's able to get into classrooms, look at instruction, right? And not just that person alone, but at the very least, they're able to get in the classroom, put their eyes on instruction and say, wow, that's dope. Keep doing that. This, hey, work on this. Leverage this one piece, and then that teacher's instruction is 1,000 times better by the following day, and boom, you've got kids performing and outperforming.
Straight up.
And then
teacher coaching, then hell yeah.
Two more. I know you said three, but I cheated a little bit.
You come in, all you want. It's our show.
You had a pre-prepared list.
Because this is my consulting list. Like, this is what I want to support and what I support principals in. Right, it's this thing. So building community, right? Building strong adult culture and this, you can do this anywhere, building strong adult culture, building strong kid culture, making the school building a place where people want to be and learn and work together. That changes the game, right? So sometimes you have somebody that's maybe a strong instructional leader, but they're like a tyrant and everyone hates them. So I can't learn from you because I don't like you. Right? We don't get along. So we need both. We need strong learning communities where adults feel like they can thrive and where kids can thrive as well. And then lastly, this is not necessarily order, but the whole DDI piece, right? Like if we're narrowing our focus, if I'm freed up to get into classrooms, if we've got strong community and we've got our eye on the data, we know where children are performing, we know what teachers are effective, we can freaking change the world, right? Like it may not be perfect, right? One of the schools I came into, I was brought in for the whole data piece. We didn't have a system. I took what I learned and I revised it and we implemented it there. And because we were consistent with it, we saw the gains, right, over time. And the teachers began to know what to look for as well. So,
David, before you go, come in. I don't know if I wish everyone would listen to this. Hire us. Hire us.
Yeah.
We know what we're doing. Look at that. Just so simple. We can do that in your district. It's not rocket science, but most districts and most schools aren't doing this. We know how to do this from soup to nuts. Hire South Star Classroom. David, what you got for us? What's your top five? Top three,
I think I would say the human capital piece for sure, which I mentioned before. So having, I know charter schools now with the unionization movement, some have a little bit less autonomy around the human capital piece, but I think even those schools have more than the district schools do. So I think, being able to hire, individuals that share the belief that all children can succeed, right? And this spills over into number two. You're also able to hire individuals that are attracted to and believe in a particular vision and mission. This is the thing that distinguishes the charter schools from the district schools, right? The district school on the corner, it's there, it's been there for 40 years. It does certain things well, certain things not so well, but it doesn't really have a mission, right? And so the mission piece of the charter school is it takes us back to like the mission of like the startup, right? Everybody's there, they're going to roll up their sleeves, and at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, it's all about mission, right? So I think that's another one. I would also add, I think the leadership piece is critically important. We don't hire bureaucrats to work. I've interviewed like people from the district systems for charter school roles, and I'm like, you're extremely talented. You have an impeccable, a resume with experience, but you have a different mindset, right? Charter school leadership is very challenging. There's no bat phone to pick up. Like it's you call somebody for help and it's you, right? We don't have the big like district systems and the big district, home offices to rely on. Charter schools are much leaner in that manner. And so I think we hire people to lead schools that again are mission driven, but they're also instructional leaders, right? They're not bureaucrats looking to get to that next level. The other piece, which we haven't talked about, is I think governance matters, right? You have a big district with one school board that governs an entire school district of tens of thousands, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of kids. In charter schools, even in the CMOs, you have a board that is not elected, and that's a good thing. People are there because they are attracted to the particular mission and vision of that school or of that CMO. So I think the local community governance piece also plays into it. And I've got more to say, but I'll end it there. We've got 5 minutes left. So take us home, Omar.
That's badass, man. That was really good. Well, we can have closing thoughts and stuff. I'll be quick. I think the things that you hit on, both of you, were absolutely things that I would have shared. So I just want to reiterate and ditto those. 3 more things. I think that there's something to say about decentralization, adaptability, and accountability. So one of the things that the study gets into is that charter schools make the barter that with the flexibility, we are highly accountable. That is a really good mix. The flexibility and the ability to be adaptive to the local circumstances and not just say it's always been done this way or this is the way the district wants it to be done. Dude, think about the iPhone in 2010. Now, 13 years later, the advancement of the iPhone. Just that one simple thing and the change in 13 years, 10 years is exponential and astronomical. And yet education, for whatever reason, we're still doing it the same way in 1913 with like zero adaptability to current circumstances. Charter schools are quick, they are adaptive, they respond to needs. And I think that is a huge advantage in what a traditional public school can do, what they do in their pilot schools, what they do in schools of innovation. Their schools of innovation are just what charter schools are doing. There's nothing really super innovative about what they're doing. They're just copying a solid formula that charter schools are doing. And that becomes a decentralized situation. Get a bunch of kick-ass leaders in that school who do instruction critically well, who develop professional learning communities, who use data, who coach teachers, and you're going to find astronomically larger results just in that case alone. Least of all the other things Jubilee and David were talking about. That I talked about small learning communities, data, and teacher coaching. That was my number two. I think the third is that there are management strategies that change the ideology from compliance to excellence. How we're coaching people, how we're managing people, because it's not just how we're coaching our teachers, it's how that principal is coaching those instructional people in the classroom. It's how our district people are coaching our school leaders. There is an entire culture within a charter school like ours of coaching, support, and growth. And that exists throughout an entire charter community where everyone is not only supporting for growth, but holding everybody accountable for results. And that just doesn't exist in a traditional public school. There is no support for growth. There is no teacher coaching. There's no administrative coaching. It's go to these like trainings and figure it all out. And the good leaders are the good leaders, and the shitty leaders will put into the lemon room or put into, sadly, the most low-income schools where no one cares, where the greatest teachers and greatest administrators are needed. But then there's no accountability. There's no, hey, you did terribly. What do you lose? Our last show talked about the state of Texas coming in, slapping the wrist. But from a district standpoint, there's hardly any accountability for poor performance. So with that being said, dude, we got about 3 minutes, final thoughts, 2 minutes, final thoughts. Ooh, take it away, David, and then Jubilee, and then I'll go. No, actually, okay. David goes, I'll go, and then ladies last.
All right.
Yeah.
I think quickly
so
for me,
the final word.
Again, calling out, where charters are falling short is important. Like special education, definitely a lot of work to be done. Instructionally, a lot of work to be done around how charters are organized around special education. And so I think that's definitely one big area for me. You mentioned it earlier, Omar. I think virtual charters, we need better oversight. 100% on virtual charters. There's definitely, we've all seen people talk about charter school grift, and I think most of it is in that virtual space. And if you're also not delivering for children, like that's a big problem, right? So that needs to be addressed for sure. And then I think my big wonder coming out of this is going back to what Jubilee was talking about earlier. The original vision of charter schools was to be like laboratories, right? And so coming out of this report, how can districts learn from what's happening in these charter schools, right? And then how can other charter schools also learn, learn about, collaborate, break down the walls to share, in some cases, very simple and basic practices that actually yield results for kids. So I'm wondering about the next step. Will there be a next step? I hope. I also appreciate CREDO for putting out these reports year over year. They've been in this game for a while. So thanks to them for doing this work. That's what I got.
Well said. I'm going to go because I want to leave the best for last. That's what I meant by, I didn't mean ladies last. I meant usually it's ladies first,
It's
but I
okay.
want
It's
Jubilee
okay.
to round us out to basically, hey, she's got what we want to say. My own final thoughts are like, we have been screaming this from the very beginning that there is something that we are doing in the charter school system that is having effective gains. And instead of traditional public schools being like, this is amazing, we should work together in order to really figure out what these solutions are, use them, get every kid, it's like they just want to blame us and scapegoat us and make up a bunch of bullshit excuses. And I got to tell you, this is a slap in the face of teacher unions. There's a slap in the face of local organizing components and communities where their abject villain is the charter school, and we have to go after charter schools because I keep saying over and over again, you keep scapegoating us and you're not looking at how horrific the traditional public schools are doing in terms of academic gains. Why are you not organizing around their gains for student performance? Why aren't the unions talking about how abhorrent they're doing in terms of student achievement in the traditional public schools? No, it's much easier to blame us than to fix the problem. And what I want to say is this is the slap right back at them, to the teacher unions out there, to the local organizing units, to Chino and XL from the Tupac song. This is your slap in the face to say you can't hide behind your bullshit anymore. You can't hide behind your fake rhetoric. You can't keep scapegoating us for your lack of ability to achieve incredible results for students. You're full of shit. You've been full of shit. The chickens are coming home to roost. And those of us that are on the right side of history trying to solve this problem will look back at this moment and say, this is the moment where those of us who care about kids and student achievement have marked a definitive line in the sand to say there are those of us that believe that every kid can succeed and we're doing something about it. And here's the rest of you effing cowards who don't belong in education, who get the shit out of this game because you never belonged here anyways, because you never believed in kids. And I want you to get the hell out of here and let the adults do the talking. That's my final word.
There you go. Hey, Jubilee, can I do one quick thing before you go?
Go for it.
All right. I want to call out and acknowledge this comment. Rocio Gonzalez is a longtime charter parent, and she's actually been involved in the founding of many charter schools in Oakland. So
the comment says parent inside classroom at charter school support teachers.
and hold on. Am I back?
You're back. Welcome.
Okay.
Jubilee held it up for you.
Rocio Gonzalez is a longtime Oakland parent advocate, and she's been involved in the founding of many charter schools. So, Rocio, gracias por estar aquí. I think her point there is, which we didn't talk about enough, is how charter schools do parent and community engagement different than the large systems, right? So this is definitely something that we should come back to. But I just wanted to call that out because she's a legend right there. We got a legend watching, people.
Awesome.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. So I just want to say, when I get into in a room in front of leaders, I say, you know what? The answer's always in the room. And I think, in our country, as it relates to education and how we can improve, the answer's in the room. Part of the answer is this report and what it is showing in terms of academic gains across, right? Like this is consistent, and it's proven that the way in which this structure is implemented, the autonomy, the flexibility, the high level of accountability is impacting students positively. And this is what we need. I don't know why in the world we are still not honoring this and saying, what is it that we can pull from this, right? So the next thing I'll say is it's important to begin with the end in mind. So I'm going back to your question, Omar, and answering it as my final thought. Like, let's get missions and visions together, right? And that's something that you said as well, Dave. Like, what is the mission and what is the vision? What is it that we want to see our students know, understand, and be able to do by the end of the day, the month, the quarter, the semester, the school year, what have you? And then let's look at everything connected to our school community and use that to purify and to purge and to hire and to fire, like, who's in the community, right? So I think there is so much here, and my hope is that one day we'll get, again, stakeholders around the table to look at this and say, how can we improve every school, right? How can we learn from every school? If they're doing it well and babies are learning and they're growing and they're showing progress, what is it that we can pull from this experience, right? And I think we are not doing enough of that. We politicize so many things, argue, we're pitted against each other, and then it's a bunch of noise and we lose our focus, which is the children. So that is my final thought.
Awesome, man. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the South Star Classroom. This has been a hell of a show. Very passionate stuff coming from all around. That is David Castillo. That is Jubilee Ransom on behalf of Dr. Charles Cole and myself, Omar Yanar, coming at you every Tuesday, 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Please like and subscribe and share this link. We love our audience. Keep up the comments, and we'll see you all next week. Peace.